Here's a look at a recap of your markets on this Friday, the 19th day of September. The monthly cattle and feed report came out this afternoon. Really no surprises there. The report probably be viewed mostly as neutral. However, I wouldn't argue with anybody if they had it leaning just ever so slightly one way or another. But all in all, I kind of suspect that the numbers were just a wash and it'll be basically ignored. On feed numbers came in at 98.4. That was within the pre-report ranges, but slightly below the estimate of 99.1. Marketings came in at 86.3. Again, within the ranges, but slightly below the pre-report estimate of 87.1. And then placements came at an even 90%. The pre-report estimate there was 91% even, but again, that was within the ranges as well. So depending on how you wanted to look at, you could say there was a few less cattle marketing, so we might have a little more backup. However, there's less cattle on feed and less cattle placed, so both of those could be viewed as a positive. So take it for however you want, but as I said, I suspect that for the most part, the report basically will be overlooked this month. Taking a look at feedlot trade, when all was said and done, or at least at the 2 o'clock cutoff time this afternoon, 44,357 head for the week. Texas and Kansas both had live sales at 240, which would be even with last week. Texas reported 1,693 head, Kansas 1,446. Iowa 15,472 head. Live sales 236 to 237. A few dress sales, very limited, 368 to 376. Nebraska reported 15,664 head. Live sales mostly $2 lower, 236 to 238. The dress sales mostly all at 370. That would be $5 to $6 lower than last week. And that makes the South currently holding a premium over the North. At the auction barns around the state this week, going to end up with about 23,000 head of cattle. Kind of a bit of a lighter run this week. Several of the reporters did note more calves coming to town and discounts on those unweaned calves, some with a little bit of flesh or no shots. Sure seeing some pretty big discounts, and those discounts will just continue to get steeper as the weather swings increase throughout the rest of this month and next month until we see a good frost. There was a few loads of yearlings scattered around, and they sold a little closer to steady. Some of them were steady, some of them a bit lower. All in all, the market for the week, probably a full $5, some spots a 10 lower. But when you look at some of those more higher health risk calves, some of those calves were 20, 30 lower, in cases even 40 lower, just very undesirable at the moment. And a lot of them were coming to town in very small groups and individuals. Just hard to make a comparison this week with a lot of those. Taking a look at some of the stick out sales around, or at least the bigger drafts. 23 head of 553 pound steers at Lolly sold at 460. The weight average price statewide this week on the heavy 5-weight steers at 429. China Livestock Auction, they sold 24 head of 601 pound steers at 446. Kingsville Livestock Auction, they had 29 head of 672 pound steers that sold at 430. Joplin Regional Stockyards sold 36 head of 709 pound steers at 391. The weight average price statewide on those light 7-weights this week at 380. Mocan Livestock Market in Butler, they had 134 head of 772 pound steers at 380. And then Joplin Regional Stockyards, they sold 315 head of steers, averaging 888 pounds at 362. Taking a look at some of the heifers, Lolly Brothers Livestock Market in Macon had 25 head of 545 pound heifers sell at 430.50. The weight average price statewide on those light 5-weight heifers this week, 396. Windsor had several drafts that all were pretty impressive prices this week of 6-weight heifers. 180 head of 615-pound heifers brought $3.95. 84 head of 639-pound heifers at even $4. 160 head of 681-pound heifers at $3.93. Kingsville Livestock Auction sold a load of 734-pound heifers at $363 and a quarter. The average price statewide this week at $355. So looking at all that, even if the market was a bit lower this week, which it sure enough was in several cases, and those prices may not be at all-time records, but they're still awful dadgum good. Taking a look at the futures markets on Friday, or first we'll take a look at the box beef cutout values. Choice closed down $17.99 for the week at $382.05. Select was down $18.52 for the week at $359.92. Volume on Friday, 131 loads of cuts, trimmings, and grinds. The Choice Select spread at 22.13. Now we'll take a look at the futures for the week. Live cattle closed 360 to 470 higher. Feeder cattle 630 to 875 higher. Lean hogs were 85 cents higher to $1 lower. On Friday, October live cattle at 233.57 up 120 for the day. December 235.72 up 157. And February 237.45 up 167. Feeder cattle, September closed up 97 cents at 359.15. October up 237 at 354.10, and November feeders up 370 at 350.92. Lean hogs for October 97.97 up 50. December 87.62 down 7. February 89.80 up a dime. Turning our attention to the grain markets at the elevators around the state on Friday, soybean bids 11 to 14 lower. Corn was unchanged to 3 lower, and wheat down a penny. Corn bids in the St. Louis region for 17, Kansas City at 404. Soybean bids in St. Louis $9.97 to $10 even, Kansas City at $9.40. Wheat bids in St. Louis $4.62 to $4.72. On the Board of Trade for the week, soybeans were 18 to 20 cents lower. The September wheat was a penny higher. The other contracts, September wheat was a penny lower. The other contracts were unchanged to a penny higher. Corn contracts for the week, 6 to 7 cents lower. On Friday, December corn was up a quarter of a cent at 4.24. March down a quarter, 4.41 and a quarter. May at 4.51, down a half penny. Soybeans for November down 12 at 10.25 and a half. January 10.44 and 3/4, down 11 and 3/4. March at 10.60 and 3/4, down 10 and 3/4. Wheat contracts December 1 and 3/4 lower, 5.22 and a half. March at 5.40 and 3/4, down 1 and 3/4, and May at 5.52 and a half, down 1 and a half. Soybean meal for October down 10 cents a ton, 282.90. Soybean oil for October 50.03 a hundredweight, down 54 cents. With the Missouri Department of Agriculture, that's a recap of your markets for this week. This is Tony Hancock.